my girlfriend got so upset, emotionally just being there that she's like, "We have to leave this floor now."
Welcome to Your Ghost Stories podcast, the weekly podcast that explores eerie encounters, spine-tingling true stories, and haunting true tales that defy rational explanation.
Each week, we bring you first-hand accounts from our guests who tell us all about their experience.
From ghostly apparitions to poltergeist activity and encounters with otherworldly beings, we leave no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the truth behind this mysterious phenomena. Gather your courage and prepare to be captivated.
You're listening to
Your Ghost Stories. Your Ghost Stories.
This week, we had Brandon Schexnayder, host and producer of the brilliant Southern Gothic podcast, a show with over 1 million downloads. Brandon is a truly great storyteller that dives deep into cases of Southern America's haunted history.
Just before we get started, if you're enjoying the podcast, the best thing you can do to support the show is by simply hitting the follow button or by leaving us some feedback in the review section or whatever platform you're listening on. Without further ado, we'd like to introduce Brandon onto the show.
So welcome to the show, Brendan. It's great to have you on board. We've been listening to a few episodes over the last few weeks, and we've got to say we're super impressed by your presentation and production skills. So it really is an honor to have you here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your podcast, Southern Gothic.
First of all, thank you guys for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I have a show. It's called Southern Gothic. We explore kind of the dark history and urban legends and old folklore of the American South. Do a lot of ghost stories, a lot of things of that nature, and of course, kind of dive into the history around it as well, rather than just the paranormal angle. Kind of look at it as a story and a contextual piece as well. Yeah.
I've been listening to quite a few of your episodes while I've been at work, and there's no questioning your skills to not only tell a story, but to really bring it to life and captivate the audience. But what set you on your path to creating the Southern Gothic podcast?
Well, I'm an audio engineer by trade. So originally, I was in the world of music. I had a long career making country records out in Nashville, Tennessee, hanging out with those kind of cats. And but so when podcasting came about and podcasting kind of sprung up, I always thought, I want to do that too. I want to do that. There's something about that medium that I thought was interesting. And being an audio engineer, I knew that I could make a product, or I hate calling it a product. I knew that I could make this piece of art, something creative that was different than other people. And it was just kind of deciding which interest I really wanted to foster in the process of making that. And I'm from New Orleans, born and raised in New Orleans, and have kind of always been around these kind of ghost stories and legends and all this kind of dark stuff. And, grew up in this kind of world and have been deeply fascinated with haunted tourism and things like that. So it was kind of a match made in heaven, and I do almost all the music and all the sound effects on the show myself, and all from kind of coming out of that background too. So yeah.
Very clear to hear you have a audio engineer background. Like I said at the start, your production is really fantastic. And as I said to you when you joined this call, we're new to this, so we could really learn a lot from you. And yeah, man, like as I say, we've been listening to your show, and we definitely encourage our listeners to go and do that as well.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
I know you've recorded so many episodes, so this is probably a tough one for you to answer. But out of all the episodes you've done, are there any ghost stories that have really stuck with you and are kind of always at the back of your mind?
Sure. Well, there's the ones that get stuck with me are the ones that just have rabbit holes that I would never have enough time to go down. So it's less that like it's an extra scary haunting that I lose sleep over, or it's less something of that nature. It's more the ones that are just really research heavy. And the one that just without a doubt, I tell everybody, all my friends are tired of me talking about that kind of story. There's just one that's really kind of come through. It's about a woman named Julia Brown who folks believed was a voodoo priestess. She lived outside in the swamp outside of New Orleans in the early 1900s, and essentially she lived out in this small community of German farmers. So it was like blonde hair, blue eyed dudes out there, with their families cutting down cypress trees and all. And here's this woman who was, purportedly born enslaved. This was a black woman who owned 40 acres out there in the swamp in this isolated little community. And according to the legend, they say that, she was a bit of like a midwife for him. She practiced voodoo and helped healing and all. And eventually kind of uh, her relationship with the town out there in the swamp started to sour, and she didn't really like the folks in town, right? And purportedly according to the legend, right? And she started sitting on her porch outside of town, and she was singing this song to everybody: when I die, I'll take the whole town with me. When I die, I'll take the whole town with me. And and she lived a few more years, lived into, I believe it was mid 80s. I mean, and in 1915, she passed away in September of 1915. And 2 days later, this immense hurricane came and devastated the entire community. All the folks in town were actually at her funeral when this hurricane plowed through southeastern Louisiana. Over 200 people died this day. And of course, folks to this day claim that that was her cursing this town. This town's no longer there. It's called Frenier. That she was singing and she was cursing the town. And I've become obsessed with this story. We could talk about this story for 5 hours. My sister researches the show with me. This is kind of a family show in a lot of ways. She's the kind of quiet partner. She's an archivist by trade. She works at the Louisiana State Museum. She's a heavy researcher, master's in library and information sciences. And the amount of information we've found on this woman, from census records to marriage licenses, and we've found this figure, this dark folkloric figure of that southeastern Louisiana area. And we've found all of these pieces about her real life over the years. And we are constantly looking for new angles to find out more information about her. And for some reason, cannot let this one story go. And I think it's almost serendipitous. I think she's like egging us on, from her afterlife. Like, come on, tell more people about me. Keep pushing this, buddy. Like keep going. And yeah, so it's called Julia Brown. If you guys, if you listen to the podcast, we have a show. I believe it's called The Curse of Julia Brown, I believe was the episode's name. It's a deep dive kind of into that. And ironically, because I'm so obsessed, even if you check out this episode and hear more about the story, we've found probably twice as much information since we put the episode out, because we've just, it's just been such a problematic researcher rabbit hole problem. So yeah, so I can't let some go for sure.
Oh, Brandon, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great story, and we're really looking forward to diving into your podcast to listen to more. You sound incredibly passionate about history and the paranormal. Have you always been interested in these fields since a young age?
Sure.
It sounds like you've put some extensive research into the stories you come across.
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up, my sister and I, our parents were genealogists, were amateur genealogists back when we were children. And, I'm 40. So this was when we were children. They didn't have ancestry.com. They didn't have all these digitized records and all the internet to do genealogy. So, as children, they drug us around the cemeteries to go like take pictures of headstones for dates, and finding, going to these little old churches that were basically almost abandoned just to find records, on family, and just up and down the Mississippi coast down in New Orleans. So, from that kind of atmosphere of going to cemeteries all the time, as well as this kind of research bug that my sister caught more than I do, it's certainly something that I joke was kind of, it was fostered early on, and a lot of my passion about history and a lot of stuff like that is I enjoy telling stories. And I think I enjoy looking at ghost stories and looking at things as these are people, and really trying to dive into a piece of history not as dates or cause and effect, but these are people's lives. And that's been a blast over the years, doing that for sure. Yeah.
Amazing. on your episodes, it really does come across as you feel like you're almost there listening to that person with that first-hand experience. But compared to our tiny island over here in the UK, the American South is like such a vast place. Do you find it quite an overwhelming task at times to find out and research new stories, or do you find that they somehow find you in a way, be that via your listeners or something that just catches your eye?
I would think you guys have more than me. We don't. I mean, y'all have history. We have like we're like toddlers compared to y'all, right? When it comes to time, and you know the South itself. When it comes to finding stories, it's not too terribly difficult. You know, fortunately, I built up a large enough audience. You know, folks will send in ideas. You know, as you research, you end up finding other places. I like to travel a lot. About once a month, I'll try and go out to a couple of locations or things like that. I buy a lot of books. I definitely, and I like to buy a lot of older out of print books and like to go to those, you know, strange little book sales and all, you know, because there's stories in there that could die. They could go away, right? There's story, maybe, you know, maybe a ghost story or something about a house that, you know, was published in the 70s, but because, you know, the ghost adventures didn't come to town and go running around in this house, you know, people might forget about it, right? So, you know, I like finding stories in ways like that. Um, but to your point about the differences in kind of history, you know, one of the things that is really unique to the American South that's interesting is that, you know, we don't have a large time period. We kind of have this, you know, the Spanish came over in the mid 1500s, and you know, and then you kind of have this smattering of all these cultures. You know, all this colonialism came, you know, in this fairly brief period of time when you know, when it was colonial North America. You know, you're looking at, you know, about 400-year period of time where all these different cultures all got smashed together in this tiny little place, you know, where you had you know, you had the colonial, the British colonial, the Spanish colonial, the French colonial, you know, and then you factor in all the Atlantic slave trade. So you have all the African cultures that are being forced to come in and infused within it, all on top of this, you know, indigenous land, you know, where indigenous people are living, and that caused so much horrific conflict in this relatively short period of time with these different cultures that it's not hard to find haunted places because of all of that fighting, as well as it's not hard to find folklore that's kind of unique because a lot of these cultures brought with them their own kind of stories that would then meld with this new environment, if you will. So, you know, we might have stories that would be very similar to what you guys have there, but might take on almost a different, you know, it would be, you know, the folks who came to North America 300 years ago from where you're at, right? Like brought the stories that you know of from 500 years ago, but somehow it's morphed into this small town story with, you know, blonde hair, blue eyed, you know, super, you know, Southern, the hillbillified version or something, if you will, you know. So, you know, it's kind of got a unique place because of this just mass amount of tension so quickly and with all these different cultures, and that's what I find fascinating ultimately. Yeah.
I do remember, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but a story about some of the settlers from England going over to America. And I can't remember, one person had to go back to the UK. And when they come back, the entire settlement was, there was no one left. And I think, was it Roanoke? I'm probably not pronouncing it right.
Roanoke.
Roanoke,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was Roanoke.
Carved on the tree. And that's
Uh-huh.
that's always spun so many different conspiracies and sort of rabbit holes to like dive down. But yeah, I always found that one quite fascinating, along with tales of cryptids and things such as Bigfoot, I mean, or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
I've always found those sort of things interesting. Like we have over here in the UK, we have up in the north sort of area, we have something called a woodwoes, and
Uh,
that they're meant to be like the UK's sort of like version of a Bigfoot. Not that I've ever seen any, but
yeah.
I've always found those sort of like rumors and sort of things like deeply fascinating as well. Something just to scare you while
Yeah.
you're out in the woods. Like, what was that?
Well, we have. I grew up in Louisiana, so it was most of my background and my ancestry is French and German, and so we have this Cajun creature that's really central to Louisiana called the rougarou, and it's like a swamp werewolf. But when you really dig into it, it's this werewolf that really is like just 100 flat or straight lines right back to old French folklore, to where here it is, it's French settlers, they have these werewolves over here, they have this, and they came to the swamps and they just kind of made up a new creature based on that, like they kind of brought this folklore. Now, no, if something's out in the woods, maybe it is. I mean, you know what I mean? Like maybe there really is something out there in the swamp, but this was the lens that they brought over. So it's exactly to your point. We've almost bastardized a lot of what you guys had originally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I vaguely remember hearing a story about, it must have been in France, of this huge, like gigantic wolf that was terrorizing a local town or a village, and I don't know if it was
Yeah.
killing people or not, but yeah,
It was Labette was what they called it. It
that's
was
it.
the
Yeah, yeah.
beast of it starts with a G, but I will butcher pronunciation, so I won't say it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how these sort of like stories and tales can just people carry on with them, and then other people sort of like just adopt them, or for their own sort of thing and make their own story out of it. But yeah, sort of part of telling stories, I suppose.
So, Brandon, over the years of hosting Southern Gothic, how would you say it has influenced your personal beliefs or perceptions about supernatural phenomena?
That's an interesting one because it has entirely changed. Because I came at this with a fairly skeptical mindset. Obviously, I had a passion for this type of stuff, um, but viewed a lot of it as a historical piece, right? And what I've found over the years is, when you tell stories like this, you anyone you ever meet, if they find out what you do for a living, you're going to hear about their weirdest day. Period. I mean, they're going to tell you about the weirdest thing that ever happened to them. Uh, so so I've learned a lot about other people's experiences as well. And the deeper I dive in, it's interesting because it's the more I believe in the paranormal, but the less of the paranormal I believe in, if that makes sense. It seems like about 99.9% of the stories we tell and the things we hear and these experiences that might be discussed, to me, feel a lot shadier. They feel a lot more, poorly understood, or things that, or might just be us convincing ourselves of something. But I have become very, very firm in the idea that there is this sliver in there. There is this piece, that every now and then it feels like we touch on, that is so unexplainable that I think we're not even touching the surface or scratching the surface and understanding. And we could talk all sorts of different theories about, go into the paranormal, about what these things are, what they might not be. My own belief, it's evolved, a lot in different ways. I really tend to looking at the paranormal a lot from this concept called the trickster in the paranormal, where it's kind of this framework, or this idea of theory that this actually, what we see as ghosts and see a lot of these phenomenon, might actually in some ways be all one type of spiritual entity that's manifesting in different ways. This might not be your ancestor, this might not be that, this might be this. And for some reason right now, that has seemed attractive to me for the last few months, and some of the reading I've done. And that'll evolve again, I'm sure. But um I tell people, even when you dig in, one of the thing that is so fun and so entertaining and stimulating about this is the fact that it does evolve. You want it to. There's none of us here will ever know the answer as to what any of this is. It's the search that is really the journey here, and whether that's a cop out or not, it's up to everybody else to decide. But it's a blast to do, and it's a blast to talk about. So yeah.
That's an amazing answer, and you're so right into what you were saying about, I think 99% of the time in paranormal cases there is an answer, or it's something to do with our powerful human minds that create this illusion that something's there, or this thing is happening. There is this 1% that cannot be explained. So in your opinion, what is a ghost or a spirit? What do you think happens to us after we die?
Honestly, that's kind of where I'm at, that I'm comfortable with not really even having a total theory at the moment. I feel like because of what I do, I, I can give you 12 different theories depending on if we want to go voodoo, we want to go, a Gullah Geechee culture, we want to go, like what culture do you want to go into? And we could certainly, run the gamut that way on what it is. But I almost feel now after as much as I learned that I'm even more confused too. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea at this point. I am yeah. Yeah.
That's the one thing that really is fascinating, is throughout history, it's not just, selective cultures that have had these experiences and encounters. It's every single culture across the world over thousands and thousands of years. Thankfully, we have people like yourself that can carry on telling these tales so they don't just get lost in time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I tell you, to your point about that 1%, I went out to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky, which is, this really super popular um haunted place. It's supposed to have these shadow people and incredibly popular on the TV shows, very well known, and did a overnight there. Or not overnight, but we did a midnight to 6 a.m. I guess it's called an overnight, right? Midnight to 6 a.m. there. There was a group of, I think there were about 30 to 40 people who were given access basically to walk around the property in the middle of the night. And my girlfriend and I went, and a lot of the folks there brought a lot of devices and tools and the ghost hunting equipment. And, we're all searching for evidence. And, we'd kind of, we might happen upon a group of them and they're freaking out because they think they found this, or the light did this, and, had that. Um, and just all these, kind of seeing that what people were interpreting as they had interacted with a spirit at one point. And, a lot of that felt, you know, um, very insincere, maybe insincere is not the word, very, very kind of self-fulfilling, right? But you know, there was a point when we were on the third floor and we were walking by the children's floor where, like my girlfriend got so upset, emotionally just being there, that she's like, we have to leave this floor now, you know, and that felt very tangible. And that, I don't know if there was a spirit involved. It could have been her own anxiety from being there. I don't know, but so as you talk about, here's all these experiences we have, all this evidence you could kind of force or come up with, but at the end of the day, what is the energy in that building and what's there that's kind of coming off of this place?
When you were saying about being out on an excursion with people, I myself have been on a ghost hunt in a group, and they make you stand in, for instance, the place I went, they made us all stand in the barn, no lights in there, the wind was whistling through, we all had to hold like each other's hand, and I had like some girl to the left of me, and then this like big rugby player type guy to the right of me, and they had these cat ball type things where when cats play with them, they would light up. So they had a load of them sort of just laying around the place. And I remember one going off, and this guy just squeezed my hand. I was like, oh, God. But yeah, in as what you're saying, it's just the energy in that room. And I think a lot of it was just everyone feeding off of everyone else. So I am a bit skeptical in that sense when we are going on like a ghost hunt or something. But then from my own personal experience, I used to work in a pub, and one early morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I was doing the procedures of opening the pub up, and I saw someone walk into like the cellar where all the beer kegs were, and I was thinking it was my other sort of like the manager above me. So I've gone in there to ask him a question, and then the lights turn on, and I'm like, there's no one been in here, but I clearly saw like someone walk in there. So Yeah, it's just things like that. I do find, again, I'm absolutely fascinated with the paranormal as through through my own experiences as well as what Jamie's had. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of make a point on the last topic that we was talking about.
Yeah, I'm skeptical a lot when you go on the group hunts. It's I was at one recently. I went to the Haunted America conference, and it was outside of St. Louis. So it's right off the Mississippi River, and they have this mansion there. It's called the McPike Mansion, and they had a big group hunt. And this mansion, I knew the gentleman who's leading it. I 100% believe his sincerity. 100% believe everyone involved sincerity that I think this place is haunted. If anywhere is, it is. But the experience of going to a haunted location with 30 people and folks running around with these little electronic meters and, trying to talk to the air, I, I struggle with that. If it was three of us, if the gentleman who took this tour, if it was three of us and we're going and we're patiently sitting in this room and slowly working. But I tell you, we went behind the mansion, and there's a crypt back there that might have been a family tomb from this mansion. And and he's very talking through with several people about how, this is what this is. And, sometimes, this is an experience I've had here, and he takes his EMF reader and he kind of puts it down. He says, sometimes I can, interact with them and you can see this. And all these people pull out their like ghost tube app phone things, right? And they all kind of throw it down on the crypt right around the EMF meter, and the EMF reader just goes up because all the phones are around it, And so yeah, it's exactly, it's difficult in some of the framework of the more popular culture. Ghost hunting is yeah, certainly something we could skip from time to time for sure.
So, as you know, Brandon, our podcast is called Your Ghost Stories. So, we love to hear people's personal paranormal tales on this show. So, can you tell us some more of your own personal tales?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I told you about, like Waverly Hills. That was something that definitely, impacted my girlfriend. We had kind of gone looking for that. I told you a little bit about Julia Brown, and I told you about how, I joke about being obsessed with that. And part of that is because, whether serendipity wise or not, we kind of feel like, I really do feel like that if she's still kind of, has some type of interaction from beyond the veil that she is looking out for us, because frequently when I tell her story or things have happened over the years for us, it's almost always been associated with something related to her. We had just several years ago, Hurricane Ida was coming through Louisiana, and it was coming through Louisiana and New Orleans, and my sister still lives down there. My family still lives down. My parents still live down there. I live up in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a Civil War area, but they live down in New Orleans. And my sister just so happened to be that night was writing an article about Julia Brown, or that week about Julia Brown for this paranormal journal. She was trying to this was only this is the first time she'd be published ever in a paranormal type, you know, work in a book. And obviously she chose this topic. And she called me, in the evening before everything was going on and said, I'm going over our parents' house tonight. I just finished this article, just hit send on this article, sent this article in, and I'm going to go over to our parents' house tonight and stay with them. And I'm going to light a candle for Julia. Maybe she'll take care of us, and everything went through, and New Orleans lost electricity for about a month almost after that hurricane. But my sister, the next day, kind of walking out and just all the damage and debris and everything, she decides to go drive down her house. And, sure enough, I mean, there's a branch that, I mean, almost waist thickness, just a giant branch of this giant oak tree came plowing down right by her bedroom, just, I mean, inches away from the bedroom. And, I look at some of those things, and enough of these small things have been related to us when these key moments of us kind of, telling this woman's story that it's almost become comical how much it happens, how much these really I don't know if it's synchronicity or maybe it is or it isn't, that we kind of joke that she really is looking out for us. And a part of me believes that. But um, as for actual apparitions and things of that nature, I don't know if I've ever experienced. I can't say with 100% certainty that I've ever experienced anything of that type of nature. I've been in positions before, going on some of these location type things and going on some of these tours and these ghost hunt things where I've definitely seen things that seen and felt those things that have kind of shook me to the core, and they were almost always unrelated to what the key story was. They were almost, it was always like there's a location here by this old battlefield that um folks talk about. This one apparition shows up and it was this person in the past and all. And I went by this place once and had nothing to do with the ghost story, something else. I kind of experienced this other kind of apparition there, and this other, what I thought might have been or not. And it felt like this energy had just kind of pulsed out through me, and it felt even more, I don't, it felt even more honest of an experience because it wasn't attached to what's been said, if that makes sense. It wasn't attached to this historic expectation of this place. So really, to answer your question, I don't have a definitive ghost story that really has ever shocked me. It's kind of always been these little brushes of, if I tell stories well, if I if I talk about them well, it seems that in certain scenarios things happen. If I go to places with an open mind, I might experience something that I don't even expect at that point. Yeah.
Do you believe potentially having this thought kind of locked deep inside you, that somehow you're manifesting these things to happen around you?
I've toyed a lot with this concept of the tulpa, right? Right. Of, it's kind of almost the opposite of the trickster, because this is, the trickster might be the same thing everywhere versus the tulpa is like you create this thing. And I I don't know if I'm making that true, but certainly when it comes to historic ghost stories, like I tell, if there were to be something like that, why is it that, you have this home, and again, the American South is toddlers in history compared to y'all. Why is it that you have this home that's 250 years old, that, this one daughter of this rich guy haunts because, she died as a teenager? Why is she the ghost in this place when this gentleman also owned 300 enslaved men that lived horrific lives on the property? Right? Like, why is that? You know, and you can look at it culturally and say, well, it's because that's the story that, like people want to tell, that the story of the little blonde hair, blue-eyed girl, right? Or, you know, maybe it's we're making that shit up. you know, maybe it is because we keep seeing this blonde hair, blue-eyed girl because that's the story we've been told, and now we are forcing this kind of thing coming out there. So yeah.
What terrifies me really is after I pass on, of being stuck here and being one of those ghosts that then end up becoming a legend. Well, not a legend, but maybe a myth. But that kind of keeps me awake some nights, thinking, God, I've lived one life. I don't want to live another eternity as a ghost, not being able to experience anything. But over here, well, in Scotland, we have one of the most haunted graveyards in the world. It's called Greyfriars. I think it's called Kirkyard, and they say it's one of the most dangerous ghost tours to go on, because so many people either fall ill, end up with scratches on them, and sometimes they even just as the tour's about to start, if there's anyone who starts to say, "Oh, I feel a bit funny," they won't let them into the tour because they say you've been targeted. They don't like you. So who knows it? I mean, it could be like sort of a mass hysteria, Was it Folie à Deux? Is that Madness for Two? I think that one's well.
I mean,
One
or
of
it's
two.
real. That's that's like the thing that you go back. Yeah. Or it's real. And it's not even the reason you thought it was real. Right. That's
Yeah.
that's the thing that the thing that I enjoy, kind of considering, but yeah.
Going back to the South, in your opinion, what makes the Southern American history and lore unique compared to other regions?
This little chunk of history, the way that, all these cultures kind of all just got smashed together and intermingled, I think that's ultimately what makes this part, this place interesting. It's almost, it's a culture that has come from the conflict of other cultures versus a culture that's, had time to grow in an isolated way. Nobody, other than, unless you were an indigenous person here to this, 99% of the people you're going to meet out here, their ancestry doesn't go farther back in this country than, 200, 300 years. And, and I think that that kind of says a lot about this particular area. Now, other places in North America certainly are similar, but the amount of strife here, and that kind of war that we're kind of, the American Civil War being like right on the heels of, and the after effects, to me, I believe still kind of linger a lot, sociologically and politically here. It's I just it breeds a different kind of atmosphere to it. um that's it's kind of got its own thing, but I will say, when I talk about, Gothic, the way I call it Southern Gothic, one of the reasons I look at it from that Gothic perspective, and that as a sort of genre, is in the old fashioned of like a Dracula type, or, in a way that is a European Gothic, where, you think about those genres sprung up as, this kind of end of the aristocracy, and these castles and all are falling down, and they're just, this is old family money from hundreds of years, and and ruled everybody, and now they're crumbling apart. You think of Gothic that way. The South has this element from that kind of plantation aristocracy that kind of harkens back to the palaces, or the castles of old Europe. So yeah.
Brandon, you are a fantastic speaker and storyteller, and it really is a privilege to have you here. We could sit and listen to your stories all day long, but we know you're a busy guy, so we're going to let you go and carry on with your podcasting. Do you have any more podcasts lined up?
We have an episode comes out every 2 weeks, and we just got done planning our schedule through the end of the year, and some fun Halloween October stuff coming up. So excited about what's to come for sure. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to hear it. And as I said before, we really encourage our listeners to go and listen to Southern Gothic. You will be very, very impressed.
Where would be the best place for our listeners to find you?
Apps, Apple, Spotify, Castbox, any of those apps that you normally listen to this podcast, or you can visit the website for more info. It is southerngothicmedia.com.
You certainly got the voice for podcasting, Brandon.
Been in front of a microphone way too much already.
Yeah, it's been great to have you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me, for sure. Yeah.
Your ghost stories. Your ghost story.
Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Your Ghost Stories. If you'd like to be on the show to tell your story, please visit our website, www.yourghoststoriespodcast.com.
We'll see you next Wednesday for another episode. Sleep tight.